You're listening to the Mind Over Finger podcast, episode number 114.
Welcome to the Mind Over Finger podcast, discussions on mindful music making, efficient practice, and building a purposeful career. And now, your host, violinist, teacher, and high-performance coach for musicians, Dr. Renee Paul Gauthier.
Hi everyone, I hope your day is going amazingly well, and I have a great conversation in store for you. In this episode, I speak with the incredibly inspiring Jennifer Montone. Jennifer is a Grammy Award winner and has been hailed by the New York Times for her flawless horn solos and warm and noble sound. As principal horn of the Philadelphia Orchestra and a world-acclaimed soloist, chamber musician, and teacher, she's been on the faculty at the Curtis Institute of Music and the Juilliard School since joining the orchestra in 2006. Previously the principal horn of the Saint Louis Symphony and associate principal horn of the Dallas Symphony, Jennifer was an adjunct professor at Southern Methodist University, performer faculty at the Aspen Music Festival and School, and coaches on occasion at the New World Symphony. She was third horn of the New Jersey Symphony from 1997 to 2000 and has performed as a guest artist with the Berlin Philharmonic, the Cleveland Orchestra, the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, and the New York Philharmonic. Jennifer regularly performs as a soloist with orchestras such as the Philadelphia Orchestra, the St. Louis, Dallas, and National Symphony, the Polish National Radio Symphony, and the Warsaw National Philharmonic, among others. She's an active recording artist with several albums under her belt, and she performs as a chamber musician in festivals and on stages across the world. In May 2006, Jennifer was awarded the prestigious Avery Fisher Career Grant, and she's also the winner of the 1996 Paxman Young Horn Player of the Year award in London, England. Jennifer shares fantastic insight in our conversation, including the importance of high-quality music education, how going to concerts helped her develop her artistry as a student and future professional, and how she prepared to go listen to these concerts, her life as principal horn of the Philadelphia Orchestra, how she prepares for performances and conditions herself to enter flow state, how she handles her busy and varied schedule by planning ahead of time, what surprised her about life as a professional musician, and so much more. This is an information and inspiration-packed conversation. I know you're going to love Jennifer's wisdom and take home so many great tips and so much insight. Let's go to the show. Jennifer Montone, it's a true honor to have you on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here.
As I shared it in the introduction, you're evolving at the highest levels on so many aspects of a musical career as principal horn player with the Philadelphia Orchestra, as a soloist and chamber musician with the best ensembles and on the best stages across the world, as a teacher at Curtis and Juilliard, and you're also a mom. So that's quite a busy, inspiring life, and I'm so excited to share your wisdom with the listeners today.
Thank you.
And before we dive in and get to all the fun details, can you please share with us how your artistic path has unfolded?
Well, first off, thank you. I feel very grateful for sort of how my life is. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I find that early education is so incredibly important, and it's something you can't control. And that's, a real shame and problematic in our field, and something we're all kind of looking at. And so to grow up in a, middle-class suburb and have access to great schools with great musical education is not a given and not an easy thing to replicate. So I I feel especially grateful for that. I ended up in a fellowship program I auditioned for that the National Symphony in Washington, D.C. runs, which is a pretty amazing program that I hope other orchestras start doing, where you get to have free lessons with one of the members of the orchestra, and you can go to their rehearsals and even get out of school for it, which was fun, and audition to play with them on occasion and do sort of recitals in the lobby before the concerts, things like that. So it was a very special opportunity, and I studied with Edwin Thayer, who is the principal horn there. And he would give me a copy of his part before the rehearsals that I would sit in on. And I would just sit there like looking at his part with his markings and just watch what he did. And it's something I always try to encourage my students to do is like get it off IMLSLP if you don't want to bug me for it, but like try to bring some music to it or know the part before you come to a concert. Really try to sort of see yourself on the stage and imagine the decisions you would make and see the decisions that are being made and kind of connect it to your own life, really. But anyway, I think I had very early great guidance in terms of that. And then I went to Juilliard, and similarly, my teacher, Julie Lansman, would suggest to me when I started taking auditions, she was like, well, these are the orchestras you're auditioning for. Go to Carnegie, go to everything the Philharmonic does, go to absolutely, every orchestra that can come through and see all the ways to skin the cat, which is a terrible expression as I sit next to my cat. But basically all the different ways that people do this really well. And then you can figure out kind of what kind of a player you want to be, what kind of a, principal horn you want, and how you want to play those solos, and how you want to, kind of share your voice. And so I feel really lucky that a lot of my education had to do with sort of reaching out for guidance and inspiration, and then bringing it back to yourself and mixing it with your own kind of musical desires and goals and ambitions for yourself. So, and then I ended up in a couple orchestras after that. So, and Jersey Symphony, and then Dallas, and then St. Louis, and then Philly. So, yeah.
You shared a couple things that is so important for all of us to hear. First of all, I totally agree with you about the early education and how if it's possible for us in any way to help the younger musicians today have access to better education, I think that it's so important to contribute back. And you've said it, I feel like music education in the school right now is being cut, and we are seeing the effects of that. So I think that a call to action is in order.
Well, and I mean, the interesting thing is that as music in the schools is less common, what is more common is the internet usage and the creativity of our field on the internet. Like, I mean, look at your podcast, for example, and, and all the great things that it can do. And then also kind of the creativity that has come out of COVID. And with everyone sort of presenting educational and performance things online, I think we could do a great deal in terms of that. So I think it's an exciting time. And now that we all sort of see that there's a problem there, and we, I think we can do more, and I think we will continue to do more. So,
yeah.
But I'm excited to see what we as a field can do to equal it out and make it more fair and more universal and more available and accessible and beautifully hearted, from on every level in which we exist on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. The other thing you said, which is so helpful for anyone out there, is this idea of preparing before you go to a concert to get that score and get familiar with it. And what you mentioned about getting ideas ahead of time and see how the playing that you're hearing in the performance is similar or is different from your own perspective.
Right.
It's so important and so interesting.
Yeah, well, I think it's exciting on at any age and at any level of our development. Just the psychological reality of how we're built, which is that when we when we have an inspiration and we have ideas, our body can often do the things much quicker and much easier and without as much stress. So things like playing along with a recording or going to a concert and then playing the solos from the piece that you just, or the common excerpts from the piece that you just heard right afterwards, kind of going off of that feel, that exhilaration, that vibe, that, everything that's just in your ear and in your body in terms of excitement and feelings from that piece, that performance you just witnessed. Like you can capitalize on your experiences much more that way. And a lot of orchestras now have these student ticket packs. Like we have a thing you can buy for, 25 or $30, and you can come to any concert of the whole entire season if you're a student. So things like that. But yeah, I think if you are prepared and kind of what you're listening for, and then you go and you hear it, and then you post do something post the concert, which also sort of helps seal it into your mind, then you've really utilized your evening very, very well. And it's an exciting way to kind of practice in a different way that's more inspiring based and more concept based, rather than sort of nitpicking the details of your own perceived flaws.
Really well put. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Jennifer, in November, we talked about audition preparation. That's a topic that a lot of people talk about. And in this month, in December, I'd love to talk about the life once you've made it in the orchestra. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like for you?
Sure. And I mean, the most fascinating thing for me in the past 20 years, I guess, since I got in this field, is how similar it is emotionally and realistically and scheduling wise as it was when I was in school. So I thought somehow that maybe once you make it, you all of a sudden feel golden and perfect and awesome about yourself all the time. And you're just like, man, I'm good. And I'm just going to keep on being good and whatever. And it's like, no, not at all. Like, if anything, I'm more neurotic and more concerned and more striving than I ever was. It's sort of the more you know, the more you want to be better. So I find that funny and sad, but that's fine. I think it's great. It's what makes us lifelong learners, and kind of it makes you want to be in the field and actually like play that Beethoven 7 again, because you want to do it better than you did last time, or different, or like hear from a different conductor about like how they think it should be, or their new ideas based off of what's going on in the world. I mean, that's another thing that's interesting now. There's so much emotionally crazy about our world right now, especially, perhaps in certain countries. And so it's like, we just, like as living, breathing artists, we're taking these works of art that are old and new, and then we're filtering them through our own experience and making them our own. And that's maybe the most gratifying thing about our field and what we can do when we're in the profession, is that, it's like you can be in any orchestra, in any chamber situation, in any freelance world, and you can put your personal stamp on it, and you can decide what's important to you. Like, what part of the field do you want to prioritize in your life today, this week, this year, and it can change over time. And I think that's another beautiful thing, is that you don't, like in school, you maybe think, oh, I'm going to be an orchestral player, but you don't always have to be that. You could be that first, and then you could go do other things. It's like you can be a teacher, you can be a chamber music, you can, it's like you can do all the things, and you can do them in whatever order you want, in whatever place you want, to whatever amount you want. And you are an artist just by definition of your playing and choosing to give that part of yourself. So I guess I've been reassured by our field, by being in the professional part of it, on a couple question marks I had when I was a student, which was sort of like, oh, am I going to make it? Am I going to be good enough? And it's like, well, good enough is what's coming out of your bell or whatever, and your axe, and good enough is not for anyone else to decide but you. And
Right.
Generally, we're pretty perfectionistic and very desiring of greatness as a collective. So, like, you're going to strive, and you're always going to think you're not good enough, but you always are good enough, because you're just creating. So it's sort of, it's a beautiful both.
Yes. And worrying that we're not good enough actually affects our playing negatively.
Of course. Yeah. As everything does. Yeah. It's worry does have a very strong corollary to all of the things that make it harder to actually be a passionate, creative artist. Because I think the creative juices come when we're feeling free and we're feeling safe and we're feeling sort of inspired. And anytime you're feeling pressure or nerves or freaking out or like things don't feel right physically on yourself, whether you're tired or your chops don't feel great or, whatever, it's or you're feeling a lot of pressure because of the situation being nerve-wracking, et cetera, it's hard to get those free, open, creative juices flowing, and it's hard to stay in this open, courageous, send it out there mindset. And I think both of those are sort of the sweet spots for us. So it's very much a game trying to get yourself to where you feel like your sweet spot is, either for consistency, just so that you can always be pretty proud of what you're putting out there, and also then for these optimal, amazing performances that are special that we all want to have now and again in our lives.
In the system that I use with my students and my clients, the deep practice model, I use mindsets. And I think I'm going to add a fourth one, the courageous, send it out there mindset. I love that.
It's a fun one. When you can get there, it's because it's the exhilarating, like the visceral, the physical, like the high. And it's amazing if you can get on a high in a concert and just be like, just riding a wave. And a lot of it has to do with the energy around you, but you can give and receive that energy.
Yes.
And so it's a really great thing if you can even just have your spidey sense unblocked enough so that you can send it out, receive it back, utilize it, and put it forth. It just makes for a great energy in the room. And it certainly, it's like sort of like a blind date. It's like when there's, when you're clicking, like, and everybody's feeling a buzz, it's like, you don't care if the person, has a little something between their teeth or says the word like too much. You're like, okay, you're awesome. I'm going with it. It's great.
Yeah. What are some of the ways that you get into this mindset?
I think there's a million ways, and I find myself flip-flopping between them. It reminds me of when my first son was born. I found on the internet, and this is very telling about me and my neurosis. I found on the internet a great list of like 100 things to do to try when your baby is crying. And I was like, this is so reassuring, because it's like, even if number 47 doesn't work, number 89 is, something's going to work, right? And it changes every time, and it depends on where they're at and what's happening. Same, I feel, with my mind to body connection when I'm playing. And there's all these reasons why, and maybe it's helpful to analyze them. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's easier just to try a method. But I love that there are books out there. I love that there are websites like I love the Dawn Green books. I have a bunch of books on my website, which is jenmontone.com, that you can try as a sort of starter. And then I think there's a million more out there. And then I love that there's websites like the Bulletproof Musician or the Fearless Musician and all of these podcasts and things. I think there's information abounding. And I think if you're generally on a rotating sort of input of things like that, like all topics relating to fearless, courageous, beautifully hearted performance, then you're just feeding your soul this constant routine of like, this is important too. And these are ideas that are just start to float around in your mind. And then you naturally do them. Like you've just been marinating yourself, in these, steeping yourself in these ideas. And therefore they come to you naturally when you need them. And then you don't have to sort of employ them as a purposeful thing. You're just like, oh, I'm just going to get into the flow and look at the back of the head of the person who's playing the tune right in front of me. And then I'm just going to hop on the moving train and take that line from them. And then I'm going to phrase right over, along with the bass line, because they're going to, do X, Y, Z. And now I'll subdivide and I'll, get myself in the physical mindset. And here I'm going to take a couple deep breaths and close my eyes and imagine a concentration ring of fire, and then, kind of gather all of my mental faculties together, feel the energy coming up and like zoom it out of my eyes in a concentrated way. And then I'm focused and I'm ready to nail that passage. Right. So there's like all these things, but they're just kind of floating around in my brain of things to try.
Yeah.
So I do also quite a lot of little meditations from apps and just, websites. Like when I play somewhere and I'm scared, I'll feel my body getting tense. I'll feel it feeling fluttery. And I've worked with some specialists relating to one is called Rubenfeld Synergy, and also like Alexander Technique, of course, and Rolfing specialists sometimes recommend these things. I think Feldenkrais also, they'll talk about basically like getting in tune with your body and what it's telling you and honoring it enough to actually listen to it. And I realized not too long ago, sadly, that I yell at my body a lot. I expect it to do things. I get mad at it when it freaks out and doesn't do things. And then I'm blaming it all the time. And I'm never really listening to it, asking it questions, asking it what I can do for it, And so I think a lot of the tools that I've been taught to employ, I was employing without a kind of a grateful, appreciative heart towards my own self. Yeah. And it's like our body and our mind and our hearts are working together to create beauty in art. And like it's doing a big job. Like they're all forces are working together in kind of a magical way. So like it's good to give it a second to like think about like, what do I need? What do I feel? What do I think I need? What do I know that I can do? And meditation might be good. Yoga might be good. Reading something or, listening to an inspirational something might be good. Maybe I need to practice. Maybe I'm feeling really unprepared and I need to cram. Maybe I need to listen to a beautiful, recording of the same piece, or something. Like for me, listening to singers always makes me feel more vocal. And it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. It's like, so, maybe a comedy skit would loosen me right up. Like just kind of self-awareness and kind of self-honoring is a constant growing, aspect of my life. And I find it like once you figure out what kind of things work for you, then you can decide when and how to employ those things.
That's so important to hear, because I feel that oftentimes, and I do the same thing too, we want the perfect recipe. We want exact measurements and exact list of actions to do that will lead for sure to a flow state or a state of comfort. And what you're saying, and you're talking about having this self-awareness. I love what you said about self-honoring and then trying things, having this flexibility, this fluidity of exploration and of paying attention to how we are right now in this moment, and giving ourselves this permission to experiment and try something that could help. So important to hear.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, on a practical level, there's a couple things that occur to me that I do regularly. One of which is that when I'm preparing for something that I anticipate being nervous for, or extra, something that feels extra important and not in my day-to-day whatever, I will put more musical instructions in there, and I will, I will design in my mind kind of a mental preparation for right before it. So this would be for like excerpts in an audition or a big solo that I know hits a weak spot of mine technically. I will, kind of make sure that I have a really clear idea of the piece, what my role is at that moment, what the stuff is leading up to it, what's going on underneath it, what I'm sending it off to, and we'll make sure that I have like adjectives written on top of the page. I'll have the instruments involved written on the page, and descriptors as to what I want and what, like you said, flow state, what kind of mental and physical place I want to be in for it. And for me, then, if you actually physicalize those things, like for a horn anyway, like breath and time, like breathing and blowing and rhythm are the two most stabilizing forces. And then they're kind of like pillars underneath a beautiful beach house. And when the waves come, like the stronger your pillars, the safer your beach house. And the roof on top is maybe your mental focus and intention. So like, if you are anticipating a storm, if you make sure that the air that you're using and the rhythm are very much related to the musical ideals you want. So a lyrical thing would be a smoother everything. A more, noble thing would be a more, relentless rhythm underneath and more send off of air. So a faster breath and more of a whoosh of an exhale, so that it all physically makes sense. Lightness, the same thing, a bouncy thing with, light, fast air, bouncy articulation, bouncy, rhythmic, state subdivisions and things. So basically kind of making sure that your musical ideals and your technical pillars, foundations, are related to each other enough so that they stick and they stay and they integrate. I feel that makes me feel much more calm and more like I've sealed out any potential, like question marks. So, basically, like I'll dig deeper and build a better foundation for anything that feels potentially very scary. And then if then a situation takes me by surprise, I think that's where I, in the moment might use more of those like I wasn't anticipating feeling scared. Like, I had a funny one with Bruckner 4 once where for some reason I was feeling more calm before we got there than I was when I got on stage, and I started to freak out. And I was like, okay, I don't know what to do. I have to start this thing. And everything that was going through my head was like, I'm going to die. I got to go. I got to leave. I got to run. I'm going to die. And it was like, well, that's not helpful. I was like, okay, come up with something better than that. So I was like, well, I was like vamping it in my head, this thing. And I was like, all right, then vamp. And so then just like while everybody warmed up, I just like started subdividing like, just started getting myself into that loop. And I went with breathing, inhale, and exhale. And then I subdivided inside of it. And then when I felt sort of like I was on a calm and a loop, I started doing some humming and nose breathing of it, which actually gets your vagus nerve a little calmer. I'm sure speaking your language here, it helps me for like getting my neurological system more calm. And so I like nose breathed and then hummed that vamp for a little while. And then I started thinking about like, an image for it. And there had been a conductor that gave me an image of like, a scene opening up on an opera stage where there's, these houses in a village and you are the hark, good morning call. And then, then when the other instruments come in, then you've got like windows lighting up and other people start joining the conversation. And then the whole, world opens up in the morning and then you're all collected during that crescendo to the, to what goes on next. So it was like, it was a really nice combination of like physical and technical, and then some imagery. And then by the time we got going, and I did that through the tuning note and everything, and the standing up, I was still vamping in my head. And then by the time I had to play it, it was like everything felt more sealed in, and I felt more safe. So you can make up a like a, on the moment thing for yourself, a little bit of a blueprint. And you can also have a cheerleader in your head. Like I had a teacher when I was in high school, Eric Rusk, who was great at like just yelling over you as you were playing. And he would be like, now take a big breath. Great. Now soft attack. Great. Now you're going to phrase to your good. And then go a little longer as you go towards the top of the climax. Yeah, that's the way. Awesome. Now over the top. Soar. Yes. And then it was like, and it was so invigorating because you're like, you're in the moment and he's just keeping you in the moment 1,000%. So I sometimes use some of those tactics as well.
This is gold information, what you just gave us. And I really hope that the listeners notice that you really leave no stone unturned, or you've skinned the cat in every way that you can think of. Because I think that the misconception is sometimes, musicians are well established, such as yourself. They walk in practice rooms and they practice their instrument. They play. And a lot of people don't realize the amount of data gathering that goes into preparing a piece of work, and all of those things that you mentioned, and who are you playing with, and what your place is in the score. All of these things that you shared earlier is how can you know more and have so much more information about the piece that you're playing, and not just walk in the room and play endlessly and mindlessly until you think you're going to get it with all the wishful thinking.
Yeah, I do find that obviously I'm least nervous when I'm very prepared. just technically on something. And I especially found when I was getting into the field, before I had played all the major repertoire a number of times, I found the most helpful sort of process to be what you do before the first rehearsal for something. Like say if you get called for a really cool gig and you're like, it's like, of course we all know how to practice by the time you get into that, but kind of how you prepare on learning the piece and kind of how you try to understand like a composer and what they might have intended in their piece, and things like the history of Russia around the time of Shostakovich, or sort of how like the French composers are so impressionistic, and how it's kind of like, sort of like paintbrush strokes. And so our crescendos can be more whooshy and more, and more immediate diminuendos and stay in sort of a floaty state longer, things like that, like things that you get through music history and everything, to kind of double down on that when you're preparing for a big week, or even just like Beethoven and Tchaikovsky being rhythmic composers. So when we have repeated notes, you don't want to just be like da 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 da. It's like you're under some tune. So go ahead and phrase with that, like that kind of thing. Sort of connecting your education of all of your music education to what you're actually practicing. So I guess what I'm advocating is like when you do get a cool gig, like definitely don't only practice the solos, but really spend some time figuring out what what all of your accompanimental moments mean. When are you a rhythmic function? When are you a bass line function? When are you a chordal function? If you want to be really fancy, what are you in the chord? And which way should it go? Just like going really deep into all of the analysis of stuff. And if you want to listen to some recordings with a score and write down a whole bunch of stuff, that's really good. Like for horns, if we have a 8-horn piece, like you need to know if you're leading 1 and 2 versus when you're leading 1, 3, 5, and 7 versus when you're leading all 8 of you versus when nobody else has their horn up and it's just you. And you're like, oh, shoot, is this right? I must have counted wrong. And then you've missed some really cool thing that you thought were multiple people. So things like that you can, basically you can preempt a lot of like oopses by doing your research very fully in terms of the pieces. And then definitely if you play with a couple different recordings, as long as it's in the country that you are playing in, like don't play along with European recordings if you're in America, because your pitch will be all wackadoodle. But besides that, but if you listen to if you play along with a couple different recordings of Mahler, you'll get a good sense of all the ebb and flow that happens, and all the transitions will feel more like intuitive to you. And both you'll feel more confident, and also you will sound more professional, more like sort of like a great colleague that the people around you will be like, oh, they fit right in. That was awesome. So it's a really good way to sort of ingratiate yourself to your older colleagues when you're a young professional, to kind of have this it's a way to bulk up institutional knowledge without actually, of course, having done it yet.
Yeah.
But it works quite well.
This is so amazing. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Jennifer, one question I get a lot from musicians is, what does it look like, the practice routine, when you have a position like yours with the Philadelphia Orchestra and you play chamber music and you teach? So people get really specific, like how much does one practice? How often? How do you balance family, travel, all of this in your life? What does that look like for you?
Sure. Well, I'm sure it's exactly the same for you too. I think
It looks like a well-maintained Google Calendar.
Oh, yes, exactly. No, and planning out stuff is really important. Yeah. Well, so to that topic, I think when I look at a whole orchestra season, I'll find the things. It's sort of like I did with auditions, where I had a coach, I think it might have been Don Green, who suggested like putting a number, like a 3, a 2, or a 1. 1 are the things that you naturally do quite well. Thank you very much. You just need to make sure you're good to go on them. 2 is like, I need to practice quite a bit. 3 is like, oof, there's a lot there. I might need to work on my whole loud playing in order to play this one well. Like I might, it's a whole topic that maybe I'm not as great at. Let me put some real time in. And I think it's the same with me for balancing my life. If I look at a season and I've got, XYZ projects and, or a summer, and there's chamber music and there's orchestra and there's teaching, and I know I'll be swamped all week for this particular teaching project, but I have a chamber thing the next week on a piece that I don't know. And, you need to kind of know the score even better for chamber music than you do for orchestra, all of that. So I'll sort of see if I can get together in my mind, at least, like, how long do I think this is going to take for me to learn this? And in what way do I need to start learning it? And a lot of times it's starting by listening to recordings and kind of getting it in my ear, and then looking at, what the big parts of it are. And I piecemeal a ton of my practicing, as I think everybody does. And I did this in school too. It was like, I'd get to an orchestra rehearsal a couple minutes early, and I'd, take the time at break. And instead of, like hanging out, I would maybe woodshed something if my lesson was the next day and I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be. And I'd stay, I'd like ask my, I guess I didn't text, but I would ask my mom, like, can you pick me up like 25 minutes late? Because I really need to practice. And, by the time I get home, I'm not going to want to. She was like, sure. So I would just like sit there and like woodshed stuff and, kind of cram. And it's like every moment is found. And as long as you're focused enough, mostly, you can basically get some work done. And in that way, you sort of, I think it's all about the focused practicing. Obviously, everybody kind of knows that, but it's basically all about the balance of what your goal is for any practice session. And if that goal can be decently clear, it's like, okay, so for this, I need to warm up and get my body in a good place. Okay, for this, I need to work on my fundamentals. This, I need to prepare this for this event. But if you give yourself goals and then you have tools of how you would shed it down, then that'll be a combination probably of, running something, maybe recording it and and listening back to give your own feedback for it. And then some of it is woodshed and practice it slow and practice it slurred and practice it on the mouthpiece and practice it with articulations and practice it, like loud instead of soft, and, with different intervals, that are easier to get to. And, do it in arpeggios, do it on the natural horn. There's a million practice techniques that we all learn. So you kind of have that stuff and you try to balance that so you don't feel like you're going to kill yourself or throw your, instrument at the wall. And then you do kind of something more musical, like where you're building a story and thinking of an image and, kind of a little bit more of like doing some structure, ideas about like, oh, well, this is the first phrase. This is a short section, long section phrase. So I'm going to do this one with this phrasing, then this one with a little bit more so, and then the long one, I'm going to do a big crescendo and then take some time at the top. And, it's like you just kind of plan stuff out. So basically, I think if you change up your practicing enough, then you're being quite efficient about it. Then the amount of practicing obviously is going to be variable depending on how much time you've got. But yeah, I would advocate for sort of the planning ahead if you can in terms of that. And then, yeah, like take all the good breaks that you need when you're practicing so that your mind is actually there. For me, I'd say for brass players and maybe wind players, like if you're feeling tight in the morning, don't push it and do all the crazy, like fancy warm-ups. Like do really easy stuff and do some stretching and do some yoga and do some breathing exercises and get your body in a good spot, because we waste a lot of time kind of pushing against a wall and then yelling at ourselves for like, why can't I play that high note? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, because your body feels awful and you're not making it any better by like continuing to do it and then yelling at yourself in between. It's like, maybe I'll do that in a couple hours. Right now, I'm going to do some stretching and breathing. I'll get my low, soft, flexible stuff going. And then, when my body's ready for it, I will like do the correct breathing and the correct sustaining and the subdividing and everything that I need to actually, healthily do that high work. So kind of knowing what your body's telling you and practicing to what your mind and body can most effectively do. It's kind of a little bit of an offshoot of like, there's a time and a place for everything. Yeah. So as long as you keep track of it all, you'll work on everything. You just need to choose when is the best time to work on what.
Yeah. Planning and paying attention. That's really great.
Yeah. And if you're fried, like, don't do anything too technical. Just like play through something and get the feel, And if you're feeling, like uninspired, listen to something, get inspired, and play like a piece from a different instrument or something. Like music is music, and follow your own needs and your own instincts as to what's going to be the most effective and efficient way for you to just continue to better yourself.
I love that. Is there anything about the orchestra life that you found surprising, that's different than what you expected as a youngster?
Oh, yeah. I guess I love that the orchestra life is very similar to like what I found in like school band and youth orchestra and everything like that. It's like it is a family, and it's this generally quite sweet family. And I guess I found very much that like the relationships that you cultivate and treasure or become the ones you treasure. So basically,
Yeah.
like you can treat it like a job, and it's like you come, you do your work, and you're out. But it's so much more rewarding, and especially musically rewarding, if it's like ask the person next to you like about their kids or their vacation or it's like just kind of get to know each other, spend some time together, be respectful, like be kind of encouraging, and you'll get that back. And then when you do play, I find it a miracle how that works with nerves, because like if I can look around and I just know all about these people on stage with me, they don't scare me then. It's like because they're my friends and I know all about what they're going through, and it's like it helps you remember like it's not all about you. You're
Yeah.
not gonna, it's like they're not sitting there judging you, waiting for you to make a mistake. It's like even when you're in an uncertain circumstance, like I just played last week with another orchestra, and it was great because like I didn't know most of them, but it's like I kind of capitalized on the ones that I did know, and I spent a lot of time kind of getting energy from them, and they were colleagues from chamber music situations, and I was like, oh, it's just like I'm playing chamber music with him, which I did last summer. And it's like, okay, so I'm just going to like have this nice conversation that I know I can always have with this player, and then kind of I extrapolated that meant that all of the rest of them would be the same and the same spirited, and, kind of we're all there for the common purpose, and we're all kind of conversing and building each other up. And then I've had some injuries over the last 10 to 15 years. And I've also found it incredible how supportive our field can be. So whenever you go through things, which I think we all inevitably do, whether it's physical injury or just an emotional situation, when you're in need and you don't feel like you're at your best playing wise, I think I can definitely speak for the fact that in my experience and those of my friends and students, like the community loves and cares about you as a person as much as they do as a player. You're not only good for what you bring, and what's coming out of your bell that day is not the only thing that's valued. It's you as a human, you as a player over the course of your career, what you give and what you receive personally, as well as how you play, and all things that are bigger than like, oh, like I'm just not at my best right now because I just toasted out my back and I just had back surgery, or my chops don't feel great, or I just, I'm going through a divorce and I can't practice and I can't get myself to feel motivated to do anything. Like all of those ups and downs are not only understood, but they're treated as a natural thing. It's like, yeah, you today, me tomorrow, and like I gotcha, and please get me when it's my turn. Like please, like it's much more supportive than I feared it would be, and I think it's a beautiful thing again that the internet helps with. All things sort of supportive. It can be scary on like Facebook about seeing kind of everyone's best, it's like,
Yes.
oh, your life must be perfect. It's like, yeah, right. It's like what we all choose to post is a comical thing. But if you dig a little deeper than that, and I think enough of us are trying to like talk about it, it's like, you got an injury, please call me. If you've got nerves that are, really getting in your way, like please reach out. Like I feel like a lot of us have gone through all of it and are still going through a lot of it, and like happy to help, and we're all a community and we can all help each other. So, but yeah, anyway, all of that has been very heartening to me in my career, and especially in the last little bit of it. So,
Yeah, that's a beautiful message. Thank you.
yeah.
Jennifer, I could talk with you all day, and I hope one day I have a chance to do this in person. But how about a round of rapid fire question before I let you go?
Sure. Thank you.
What's a habit that you have that you think contributed to your success?
Stubbornness, obstinance.
That's a great one. What doubts or resistance, internal or external, have you had to face on this journey?
I'd say the worry about not being good enough and what people think of me.
I think that a lot of people could relate to that for sure.
Yeah.
What skills do you think young musicians studying today should acquire in addition to learning to play their instruments?
I'd say mental focus is probably the main one.
I get behind that for sure.
Yeah, I think nerves and mental focus are very related.
Do you have a favorite tool in the practice room?
Yeah, I love singing and then buzzing on your mouthpiece and then playing. I know a lot of people can't do the buzzing, but singing and then playing. Or singing and then some variation. Maybe it be all slurred or all slow or something. Singing and then some physical version that's not the exact normal way it's played. And then do the normal way it's played.
I love that. What is a piece of advice that was given to you that you would like to pass on to the listeners?
Oh, I guess a piece of advice from one of my mentors, Sylvia Alamina, just that whatever you bring to the table musically and as a player, there is somewhere that is going to be exactly what they want. And so don't worry if the places that you put it out there, if it's not just the right fit, it's just you haven't found your right fit yet. But there will be people out there who want exactly what you're giving. You just have to keep on looking until you find it.
Yeah, that's an excellent piece of advice. And finally, how about a quick actionable tip that the listeners can implement today in their musical lives?
Okay. I'd love to do a particular focus technique that I love. It's originally from Don Green, and it's basically, I call it the hula hoop meditation. It's taken out of a longer meditation that he does, but I do this before every excerpt in an audition and every solo on stage. A little goofy, sorry. But so you imagine you're hula hooping and actually wiggle your hips. Now the hula hoop turns into a ring of fire. Then it becomes smaller and smaller until it goes right around your waist like a belt, and it zaps inside your body. Once it's inside your body, it becomes a ball of fire, which gets smaller and smaller until it lands at the base of your spine, 2 inches below your belly button, 2 inches inside your front. It's a place of chi, where martial artists fight from. It's a place of power, concentration, focus, potential. You can feel that ball of fire sort of buzzing and humming and vibrating and burning. And then it's going to burn its way up your spine, behind your belly button, behind your lungs, behind your chest, up through your throat. And then it's going to come out your eyes with a fiery concentration and mental focus. 3, 2, 1, go. And then you do some subdivision, you do some breathing, you get your idea in your head as to what you want musically, and then you play. And I find it very, very helpful for kind of getting everything collected. I also like a meditation that I learned in a yoga place once that was a Mount Fuji meditation, where you imagine that you're Mount Fuji and there's lava coming out of you, and the storms come by and mess up all your trees, but you are a gorgeous mountain, and you are still there and still strong, and you still have lava, and you could obliterate the entire country if you wanted to. So I think I like all things sort of fiery and focused, and things like that can help you feel really strong and capable of great beauty at the same time when you want to play.
Powerful images. I love it. This is so great.
Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today. Where can everyone find you? You mentioned your website earlier.
Yeah, thank you. It's been so much fun chatting. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'm completely open if anybody ever wants to chat, or if I can be of any help to you in any way. Mock auditions are a great way to feel confident about things. Mock performances, if you ever just need another ear, even comments or no comments, like I am here, and so many of us are happy to do that. So anyway, please reach out.
I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, seriously, because it's so much fun and it's really helpful. Yeah, the easiest way is probably through my website. There's an email address, or there's a link there that you can email me through that. I'm really bad at responding to emails, but I will get back to you. And the other way is probably through Curtis or Juilliard. Both of them have an edu that you can totally reach me at. But anyway, looking forward to meeting you and chatting with you in the small world of ours.
Yes, you've shared such important and inspiring insight, and I know that I'm going to walk around for days inspired by our conversation, and I'm sure that the listeners will feel the same way.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. That's so kind.
Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jennifer Montone. I feel completely energized by this discussion, and my head is buzzing with ideas. And I'll be expanding on those ideas in the Mind Over Finger Facebook community on Friday, December 17th at 10 a.m. Central. So I hope you join me for a discussion on those topics that Jennifer covered, and to ask me any question you have about practicing, performing, and creating a meaningful musical experience. You can find the community at facebook.com/groups/mindoverfinger. If you relate to this conversation, don't forget to share with everyone you think could benefit from Jennifer's wisdom, and let her and I know by getting in touch with us, and let's keep this discussion going. I'm Mind Over Finger on both Instagram and Facebook, and she's Jennifer Montone. Don't forget that Practicing for Peak Performance, my transformative workshop, is now available for download at mindoverfinger.com. It's a process that works and that will allow you to enjoy efficient practice sessions, to gain confidence, and to perform at your very best. Check out Practicing for Peak Performance at mindoverfinger.com. As always, I will have all the information related to this episode in the show notes. You can find them via your podcast app or by visiting mindoverfinger.com. While there, you can find more information about mindful and efficient practice, performance preparation, and how to work with me. And by signing up for my newsletter, you will receive your free guide to a productive mindful practice using the metronome. So that's it for today. Again, thank you, and à bientôt.